second to set it up. This is Miriam Raftery with East County Magazine on KNSJ, and today my very special guest is Supervisor Jim Desmond, who represents San Diego County's 5th District. It's a big district. It includes North County from the coastal areas all the way east to Borrego Springs, encompassing many of our region's mountain, rural, and desert communities, as well as several Native American reservations, I understand. So Jim, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us today.
Miriam, thanks for having me.
It's great. So today we're going to be talking about SANDAG, the San Diego Regional Association of Governments, which is comprised of mayors and leaders from all the cities, as well as some of the supervisors and various advisory members, and some of the major impacts of actions they're taking that affect our region, including some proposed new taxes. So first, a little bit of background for the audience. State legislation by Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez back in 2017 shifted the SANDAG voting process so that now I understand it's weighted by population, not equal weight for every member or every city. So now that means the cities of San Diego and Chula Vista control basically 60% of the vote. Is that accurate, Jim?
Essentially 50. So it's, they control 50% of the vote. And then if they get one other city, they get whatever they want.
Yeah, exactly. And one would hope they might be a bit altruistic and look out for everyone, but it seems like that isn't happening. And of course, some of our local areas really don't have a vote at all. Jim, you served on SANDAG for a while, not currently, I understand, but does that mean essentially that your vast unincorporated areas, the rural, mountain, and desert areas out here, at least the ones in your district, do not have any representation or any vote on the SANDAG board? Do you think that's fair?
Well, no, absolutely not. But we do, the county does have 2 seats on the SANDAG board, and one which is filled right now, I think, by Nora Vargas, and she's from District 1, which is South County.
Right.
And Joel Anderson does, he is also
Yes.
a seat on the East County supervisor. And so he does have a seat. So he does, the 2 of them essentially represent all of the county and the
all 5 districts, yeah.
County. And so we do have representation, and yes, I was on SANDAG for about 10 years, but with the new election, the recent election, I am no longer on SANDAG. So I do have a good bit of experience, and I'm very up on what's been going on here in SANDAG lately. So I try to keep all the citizens in North County informed. Right.
So basically, for the whole unincorporated areas, there's essentially one vote. And even if that vote, is against something, the 2 cities of San Diego and Chula Vista plus one other anywhere, they can get Encinitas or someplace and they're good to go. They can basically outvote everybody else. Yes. So let's talk about the mileage tax. I think it's a good example of why there's some inherent unfairness in what can happen with this new process. My understanding is that this would charge people 4.3 cents for every mile they drive. A little part of that is a state tax, and the rest is a county thing that SANDAG would add on. The intent of it is to fund construction of primarily mass transit and other transportation needs. And the reason given, I guess, is that gas tax revenues are actually down quite a bit because so many people are now driving hybrids or electric vehicles or fuel efficient things. So explain to those who may not be familiar with it why you and also Supervisor Anderson are opposed to this measure.
Well, what it is, it's basically the regional transportation plan that's going to be coming forward at SANDAG. And you're right, the plan does, it's about at least 2/3 of the dollars are going to transit projects. And then another big portion is going to active transportation, which is bicycles and trails and things like that. And very little of it is actually going to go to roads.
Right. So things like the widening of Highway 52, which people in Santee have long wanted to reduce the gridlock. That's not on their radar anymore. Is that the
no? But you're still paying for it because there's a current Transnet tax that's been in place since 2008 and goes to 2048, and that was for widening the 67, for making that 4 lanes, and widening the 52, and for up in North County for putting HOV lanes on the 78. You're still going to be paying for that tax when this new one comes into place, and you're going to be paying for it until 2048, which is one of the really, kind of egregious things I think that SANDAG is doing, is they're not fulfilling the promises of the last Transnet tax in their plan, and yet they're here, they have their hand out again, and they're still collecting the old tax and not using it where it should go. So, this And the fact that their plan they're coming up with a regional plan is not regional at all.
Exactly.
It primarily all of it goes to the city of San Diego and transit in San Diego, which is fine. It works there, but they can't neglect the other areas of the county where we still need roads and road services and infrastructure. But unfortunately, the vast majority of this dollars are going towards transit, which to me, in my mind, is, we're using the tools of the past, transit, trains and buses, instead of embracing the future, which I think is going to be much more, electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, and things like that, where you just summon a vehicle as opposed to, having to take a train or a bus. And I think that's where the future is going. And
Yeah.
this plan is going to be outdated before it even gets anything done. The current trolley line that goes from that shouldn't have opened by now and still hasn't, from Old Town up into University Town Center. That's taken 30 years to put that rail line in, and technology is going to change 10 times over with cars and vehicles than take that long to even build a trolley line just a few miles.
Yeah. Now, I took a look at the map of the new proposed transit projects, and it basically showed nothing east of La Mesa, I believe. So all these rural mountain desert areas would be asked to pay this 4.5 cent or 4.3 cent tax to fund predominantly transit in other areas where they don't live and they can't benefit from it. And while encouraging transit, it certainly is beneficial in reducing air pollution from vehicles and greenhouse gases, it seems to me like this is essentially taxation without representation. It's putting a heavy financial burden on people who don't have any alternative to driving their vehicles. Let's say you live in Campo or someplace like this, where maybe you're driving 100, 150 miles round trip to go commute in San Diego, or, you deliver stuff in your truck or something like that. You could be racking up, thousands of dollars, certainly hundreds, possibly thousands in some cases, for this tax per year. And it's not like a pay at the pump. At least if they increase a gas tax, you start to realize when you go to fill up, and maybe you cut back a little bit on your recreation or something. But with this, it just seems like it could really hit people where it hurts. I mean,
absolutely. And it's not just the 4.3 cents. That's just the mileage tax. There's several other taxes. They want to put in 2 more half-cent sales taxes, one in 2022 and then another one in 2024 or 26. So that's going to put it. And then in the MTS area, Metropolitan Transit Service District, where the San Diego Transit's organization, they're going to also come for another half-cent sales tax. So we're going to be up to almost 10 cents in sales tax dollars, in addition to the 4.3. And then they want to make a toll lanes out of over 800 miles of existing freeway lanes.
Where would that be, by the way? What freeways are they talking about wanting to turn into toll roads, or do we know yet?
Well, I have no idea. I don't know. I'd have to look at the charts, but they have a number. They have a mileage, 819 lanes of mileage lanes of San Diego County freeways. So I don't know how much we have in San Diego County, but 819 is a big number for the number of mileage, for lanes. I know for me, when I drive downtown San Diego, it's 40 miles, so 80 miles round trip. So that's up and down the 15. So it would, and that's only 10% of the 800 miles.
Yeah, I mean, we dispatch reporters all over the place over something like a 2,000 square mile area. It would definitely affect our ability, to budget to do that. And I'm sure many business people and just ordinary people that I'm hearing from, who maybe they commute for work, school, medical reasons. What about a cancer patient that has to come into San Diego for chemotherapy treatments on a regular basis? How do they afford this? I mean, I should mention in all fairness that I guess the benefit per se is that supposedly eventually transit would be free with this, but that only helps you if you live in an area where you can access transit. And of course, if they actually follow through on that promise.
Miriam, nothing is free. Nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
You're paying for this one way or the other. And one of the noble causes or outcomes that they're trying to do is to clean up the greenhouse gases in the air.
Yeah.
which I'm in favor of. We got to clean up our water, we got to clean up our air and everything else. But electric vehicles are going to do that, not
Yeah.
buses, trains. And
One thing they should do with the electric vehicles, we actually were going to buy one. And we found out that because I had a smart meter removed from my house, because I actually had negative health impacts when it was on the outside of my bedroom wall. I was getting a ringing in my ears, and every time I'd leave home on vacation, it would go away. And the first night back, it was there. So after much fighting with SDG&E, we finally got it removed. And now we found out that the price structure is such that if you don't have a smart meter, it's essentially unaffordable to, to be charging it up during the hours we would need to do it. So it seems like maybe getting rid of that and saying they have to, if you get an electric vehicle, you've got to be able to get the same rate, that would encourage more of it.
Technology is going to fix a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
You can have induction charging, which basically there's wires in the freeway that your car just goes over and gets recharged.
I love that idea.
And having to park it someplace. And you remember smog days? What happened to those?
Yeah.
Technology cured that. Technology, we took the lead out of the fuel and changed the technology of the engines and to put out less emissions. And we were able to do that with technology. And what they're advertising, Sandig is advertising this regional transportation plan is to reduce congestion. This is not going to reduce congestion at all. But that's how they're advertising it. And that's how they're hoping people will.
Right. I mean, maybe in the San Diego urban areas, but when you get out, east of La Mesa, east of El Cajon, it's going to have no impact because there is no transit alternative for those folks. They're still going to be driving. They're just going to be paying more for it. So you're right about that. And I think it is important to note that those who are opposed to this are not necessarily, not concerned about climate change or emissions or clean air. It's just that they want more equitable solutions that doesn't put all of the burden on one population for it. I recently interviewed, or one of my reporters recently interviewed Carl DeMaio, who also is, of course, leading the charge out there with his Reform California to oppose this. But he had a point. He mentioned that San Diego already has California or San Diego already has the highest income tax, the highest sales tax, the highest gas tax, the highest car tax, and some of the highest property taxes. And I had my reporter do a fact check on it, and he was right on all of those. He wasn't quite right when he said highest electricity rates, but we're real near the top. I think Hawaii has a speed on that one, and water rates. So I think there is a point. And I also think there's a perception by some that poverty is really only a problem in those inner city urban areas, but can you tell us a little bit, can you educate them about income disparities out in your district or in the rural areas? I know at least in Supervisor Anderson's district, there's some very high poverty rates when you get out into places like Boulevard, where 60% of the families the kids are on, the federal school lunch program. And that was even before the pandemic when more people lost jobs. But, what would you have to say to that? Isn't this going to adversely affect poor people in rural areas?
Well, absolutely. It's more of a regressive tax because what's happened with our housing has gone up, astronomically, the amount of the lack of housing, and housing prices have gone up. We're driving our workforce further and further away. And a lot of people who work in the service industries were very hurt during COVID here. And a lot of them, there's people that commute in from Hemet and Temecula and there's affordable housing in Borrego, but, to drive, if you have a job on the other side, on the other side of the hill.
Oh yeah, that's a huge drive.
All this money, and so we probably have fewer levels of poverty in North County than maybe in some of East County, but we still we have pockets of it, and there's a lot of people that are going to be negatively affected by this tax and not have the benefits of the of transit in San Diego County. And if you even think of a young family trying to use transit, I mean, I remember when my kids were young, my wife and I would look at each other and say, okay, who are you taking where today? I'm going to get the kids for soccer or the orthodontist or take them to the doctor or whatever the case was. And so it just isn't, young families are also going to be heavily penalized as well. And we're driving our workforce further and further away. And I think they're the ones, the poor that are going to be hurt, they hurt the most are those that can't afford to live here and commute in from someplace else.
Yeah, I mean, and it isn't just trains and trolleys. There are buses, but in parts of East County, I know it can take 2.5 hours each way to take a bus, 3 hours each way. to take a bus. If, say, you have a medical appointment, some places you actually have to call ahead. The buses only run a couple days a week. And what if your doctor appointment, your doctor can't schedule you? So it really is just impractical to just say don't drive. A lot of people have no choice.
But they'll tell you that they're going to double up the number of buses and things like that. But 3% of the city of the county of San Diego rides transit right now. 3%.
Wow.
If you multiply that times 5, and you think you're going to gain that many more people riding transit, 85% of the people are still on the road. So
yeah.
We have, I think, put technology in the road, technology in electric vehicles, and technology in cars, so that we can use our roadways much more efficiently than we are today.
Yeah, there's a technology for solar parking lots, for example, where you could park your car somewhere and it could be charging up while it's sitting there. Maybe they take some of the major employers or somewhere like San Diego State or someplace and do that, the big destinations where people are going. Let's talk about what happens next with it. Now, Sandag just in principle approved putting this mileage tax into its broader 2021 regional plan. Apologies, let me turn that phone off. I'm sorry. Let's see where I can put this where we won't hear it again.
Hey, Miriam, he's going to run at 3:30, just FYI.
Okay, we're almost done, I think. So the mileage tax is part of a broader 2021 regional plan that Sandag, I understand, is going to be voting on December 10th. Is that correct, Jim?
Yes, that they would be approving the plan at that point in time. I don't know if they're approving the tax yet on that for the mileage tax or not. I'm not sure about the mechanics for that, but they'd be approving the plan.
Yeah, I think they voted on October 30th in principle to put it in, as I understand. It's all very confusing because there's so many moving pieces to that. But at any rate, they've got a big vote coming up December 10th. And then eventually, no matter what Sandag wants, I believe the whole plan will eventually go before voters county-wide. Do we have any idea of when that might happen?
Well, the plan will not go before the voters. The plan will be decided by the Board of Supervisors at Sandag.
I see.
I'm sorry, the Board of Directors. I'm not the Board of Supervisors.
So Sandag does have the final say. This doesn't go before voters?
For the plan, absolutely. But what they're gonna have to do is come to the voters for those half-cent sales taxes. So the 2 half-cent sales taxes are going to have to come to the voters.
So not the mileage tax. Then only
the mileage tax. No, that's already been granted by the state can do that, and counties can do it, and so that does not have to go to a vote of the people. The vote of the people are going to be on the 2 half-cent sales taxes, and there's going to be one coming, we're told, in 2022, and then another one follow up that by. I think like I said, either 2024 or 2026. Mm-hmm. So that's what's going to come before the voters, not the plan itself.
Do you anticipate any legal challenges being filed over this mileage tax?
Yes, there's already, I think there will be, because Sandag's assumptions are pretty wild out there. And they've assumed housing in certain areas where housing really can't even exist. And they've trying to kind of taken over or usurped to local land use and housing plans and things like that, to where they really haven't worked with the cities, and I don't think, and they're really, in my opinion, they're trying to cram this, program or this plan, down everybody's throats, and as opposed to working regionally with people.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if they're going to impose it at all, there either needs to be a benefit for every part of the county, or maybe you exempt those that are just too far away from transit, or especially the low income ones, but they haven't done any of those things at this point.
No.
Is there anything that can be done to make the whole Sandag voting process more fair? Has anybody ever filed a challenge to that weighted vote thing that Lorena Gonzalez pushed through the legislature?
Not that I'm aware of. The only way you can change it, because Sandag essentially was set up by the state legislature. We're one of the few.
Interesting. How'd that happen?
I don't know. I wasn't around then, but the she was able. She's very powerful. Lorena Gonzalez is
right.
in Sacramento.
And you mentioned labor having. I believe your aide mentioned that labor had a big say so in this whole.
Oh, well, thing. Absolutely. And what she did is the entire state voted on Sandag's voting structure. So people from Humboldt County, people from Nevada County, people from all the county throughout the state, all of the state assembly people voted on how Sandag's voting structure should be. So people that didn't even live here came up with it when she submitted this as a state legislation, that then all of these people from around the state voted on it, and then we got stuck with it. And essentially what it came down to is her district, Chula Vista and the city of San Diego, gets 50% of the vote on any of the transportation decisions. And so that's the only way to change it. And at the time I was a mayor of San Marcos, we just felt disenfranchised. It's like, why do we even show up at these meetings? Because our voice doesn't count anymore. Those two cities and one more, so usually Imperial Beach or some nearby city goes along with them, gets what they want, and the rest of us end up paying for it.
Yeah, it just seems inherently unfair. And I also really question the legality or constitutionality of it. I'm amazed that there hasn't been a challenge filed legally against it, but maybe someday there will be. I also wonder why the way that Sandag is structured. I note that Native American, tribal leaders, they have an advisory vote, but why don't they have why is there no full vote for any of the tribes? I mean, they're residents, they vote. Why don't they count?
Well, I think unfortunately we put them out on reservations that are out in the unincorporated areas, and as you noted, hardly any of this transportation effort goes there. They do have actually. I think Chairwoman Pinto from I think the Hamul tribe. Yeah, she's on, and she served for many years on there, but
as an advisory member,
as an advisory, and they don't get to vote, which I think is unfair. They should get a voice. And many of the unincorporated areas are kind of underrepresented. You've got the city of Del Mar with like 4,000 people has the same representation as the city of Oceanside with 180,000 people. So as far as the tally vote goes, but the weighted vote overrules everything. It used to be a more blended, weighted and tally vote, and to where smaller cities had input, but now we don't, and it's very frustrating. And unfortunately, since that time, the unraveling and the contention of Sandag has gotten more intense, unfortunately, because of the this kind of the bulldozer effect of the city of San Diego and Chula Vista getting what they want.
Yeah. What can the public do to make their voices heard on these issues, or is there anything at this point?
Well, they can vote no on any tax increase that Sandag puts forward. I mean, that would be the first thing they can do. And then also show up at the Sandag meetings. But unfortunately, a lot of people that come at the Sandag meetings are, the transit riders and people who support their efforts and the unions.
So they need to hear more from the people who are going to be hurt by this, not just the people who may benefit from it, it sounds like.
Well, that's true. And quite frankly, this is very union driven. In the fact that the unions have already been promised all of the projects in this future funding for this $163 billion, which is in today's dollars. I don't know what it's going to be by 2050.
Probably go up.
It'd be double or triple that. And they've been promised these jobs. So if you're a contractor and you're not a union contractor, you can't bid on these jobs, even though this is all public money. And the normal threshold for passing a tax is 2/3. If a government entity puts a tax before the voters, it has to pass by 2/3. If a non-government entity puts a tax forward, such as a union, it only needs 50%. So the plan is for Sandag not to put this forward, is to have the unions go out and collect signatures for these tax increases, and then it only needs a 50% chance of passing. These are public funds. These are public projects, and they're already limiting who can, the businesses who can bid on these projects, and leaving a lot of other people out. And to me, it's very unfair. And it just shows how unfair this whole project, the plan is, and how it leans towards rewarding one group of people and not benefiting
and hurting others. Yeah. Well, I know that you are just about out of time and you have to run, Supervisor. Listeners and viewers, we've been speaking with Supervisor Jim Desmond. Jim, I'm going to let you have the final word today. Is there anything else that you want our audience to know that I haven't already asked you about, or any points you want to end on today?
Well, just know that Sandag's regional transportation plan is here. They're just out here again with their hand out with a new set of promises. They haven't fulfilled the last promises. And it really, they should look to see if they're benefiting or not from this transportation plan. And I would advise everybody to vote against their sales tax increases until we get a full regional transportation plan go forward.
Yeah, one that benefits all regions of the county. Well, Jim, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today on the East County Magazine radio show on KNSJ 89.1 FM Descanso, and which will also be podcasted on our website for those of you that tuned in late at eastcountymagazine.org.